Hi and welcome to this tutorial. This is the tutorial on Helen Hopekirk's Air in grade 8 piano. So yeah, I kind of liked it at first but had quite a lot of things that I felt were big weaknesses about it. Part of me, to be a little bit honest, was like, did they just include this piece because it was written by a woman? Because there's been a lot of emphasis in this year's ABRSM to include more pieces by women. Now that is great, that's absolutely fine. I did actually go off and listen to Helen Hopekirk's music on Spotify, and I've got to say that her music is actually really good. I like her music, but I just didn't like this piece quite so much. I thought it was an odd choice out of all of the stuff that she's done. What she does really, really well is to combine Scottish influences into classical music, and sometimes she does that really, really well. Now there are little hints of that here, but they're nowhere near as strong. Anyway, so what is it that I kind of struggled with? Well, it's the structure of the pieces. I found just not satisfying at first, but I'll talk about how I grew to like it. So we've got and already that's a little bit odd. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, it's a little bit odd. And then 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. That G sharp just seems to take so long. So far so good. We're waiting. Okay, and now and it just that's so. I mean, I know I played it a little bit longer, but it's like none of these rhythms sort of relate to any of the other rhythms. So we've got we've got da 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 da. Okay, da da da. And then, do we use any of these rhythmic elements again? No. Da 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 da. It's completely lopsided and unbalanced, this rhythm. If you presented this to a composition teacher, the composition teacher would look at it and go, but the rhythm's just all over the place, there's no structure to it. And then once you've had that, and then where did that come from? It's just it's like in graphic design. I don't know how many people are interested in graphic design, but it's like designing, I don't know, let's say a brochure or a website or a CD cover or whatever it is, using 10 different fonts. It's like, whoa, it's just too much. There's no structure. It doesn't feel unified. So it's just very, very odd structure. And then what I think absolutely is the weakest part, and I have not grown to like this bit. So then going from bar 8, I mean, that's really beautiful. Anyway, bar 10, leading into bar 11. Now, what is going on in bar 11? That bars 11 and 12 just do not do it for me. It reminds me a little bit of like the Mendelssohn Rondo and Capriccioso, whatever it's called. I can't remember the thing that goes. Yeah, it's something like. Been years since I've played this. Whoops, as you can hear. Now you can get away with that kind of playing, that kind of accompaniment, because the tune is interesting and it balances. But out of nowhere, And this G sharp just takes forever. Yeah, it just doesn't work for me. It just feels unbalanced. And now I'm going to cut a long story short, because no, I'm not actually. I'm going to keep the story a little bit longer. So what I was finding is that a lot of the dynamic markings befuddled me. they made me go, why have you done that there? And one of the ones that the biggest culprits of this is bar 21. So let's go from bar 19. We've got and then bar 21. Now I would expect to go louder. Well, maybe a little quieter there, but certainly bar 22. And then I want to go louder, but she goes quieter. So I'll play that again from bar 19. So bar 19. Bar 21. Okay, I'll give her that, a little quieter here. I want to go louder, and then louder. Now I know that in a way that might be a little bit like spoiling the ending. So it's a where is that? Yeah. Okay, not spoiling the ending so much, but just basically holding back until you get this beautiful sort of unfolding, this beautiful expansion right at the end. So maybe, you know, there might be a point for saying that you want to hold fire until and I'm in bar 41, bar 42, and you know, maybe we're holding back for that, but we also have the same thing again in bars 29 and 30. So let's go from bar 27. And then bar 29. Quieter. Now here, I really want to get louder. And what is interesting is that she writes crescendo and a diminuendo. It's like, well, what do you want? And I think there's a couple of places where she's written two completely contradictory things in at the same time. So it did sort of make me wonder, well, why are these? I mean, basically, one of the things behind everything that I do with classical piano is I look at every single marking. My old teachers would have been so proud of me because I was the worst student. I was the kind of student that was so lazy. I just played the notes and I never looked at the markings. And now those students drive me crazy. But it's not a question of just doing the markings. If I see a diminuendo or I see an accent or whatever it is, I never just do it because it's there. I try and question, well, why did the composer put it there? It's like a little window into the subtleties of their mind. So I never do it just because it's there. But well, why? So I think what's interesting, this piece did not really come alive for me for quite a while, because I think that with romantic music, this is romantic era music, we want to figure out how to amplify the emotions. We're looking for contrast. We're looking for the places where we emote and give emotion. So if we're looking for where to give emotion, think Lang Lang. I'm going to try and play like Lang Lang. Really over the top, giving emotion. And whoops. Being a bit mean, but you know the kind of play. People who play Chopin badly. And then lots of raised eyebrows, and a lot of people hunch their shoulders. So anyway, you know, that style of playing, it's just, you know, very, very, very emotional, full of drama, full of stuff, you know, full of lots of, you know, you have a happy emotion, you have a sad emotion. So like, for example, what's happening at the beginning? I'll come back to this chord in a minute. So, cantabile, singing. Da, 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 happy. Da, 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 questioning. Da, yearning. Da, 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 and then now moving, and something expansive. Sorry, where am I? There's a little bit of pride or joyfulness or something unexpected, and then something beautiful is unfolding. Little bit of sadness. Wistfulness, sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Thinking about something in the past wistfully. Nostalgic chord. And then thoughtful, pensive. And now here, calm. Little bit sad, maybe. And now, with suspense. And you know, and so on and so on. And so, you know, usually when I play a piece of music, I'm looking for what the emotions are, and you want to kind of amplify them a little bit, you know. You know, this kind of playing. Anyway, it's sort of, I realised that when you've got all these diminuendos at the points where you want to grow, like going from bar 21 and then 22, I want to grow. This is the emotion in there, but doing the opposite, so from bar 21 and then down and then it's like the emotion is being held back, and it took me a little while to kind of come up with what I feel is a satisfactory explanation and understanding for what's going on. And basically, I think, and before I say this, by the way, this is really above and beyond. I mean, I'm talking in many ways really post-grade 8 level interpretation, but you know, the piece it's very simple. Some people have argued that this shouldn't be in grade 8, this really should be in grade 7. It's not that tricky. And so, you know, what I believe with my students is, well, you know, let's just push it a little bit further. Let's sort of get out of our comfort zones and really figure out, how do we make this piece really, really special? There's like there's already loads of people playing this piece on YouTube, because it is sort of quite simple, and so there will be loads. I think most people will probably choose this for their List B piece because it is quite straightforward. And so, you know, you can have so many people suddenly looking at this. Let's just take it a little step further and look in a little bit more depth at it. But also, having said all that, there is no set way of interpreting stuff. You know, you can interpret it in whatever way makes you satisfied. This is just my thought, you know. But anyway, having said all that, you know, I've built up the suspense, hopefully. So this is what I think is going on, and maybe this has something to do with the fact that she is a woman composer. What's interesting is that when you measure something called heart rate variability, I won't go in, I'll try not to get drawn down this rabbit hole, but it basically measures your nervous system, and it kind of measures how much you've got. Two basic parts of your nervous system. You've got the nervous system that makes you stressed, that gives you fight or flight, that makes you active, that makes you mobile. And then you've got the part of your nervous system that calms down, which is soothing, which is sort of very still, very it's calming. It's the calming side of your nervous system. And what's interesting is that when you measure men and women's nervous systems, men's nervous systems are generally more inclined to be active, stressed, in a state of anxiety and doing and all that kind of stuff. And I think that, oh God, without wanting to get down another rabbit hole, there are some women music academics who basically come up with the idea that all of Western classical music is inherently patriarchal in the way that the music just works, in the way that harmony works, in the way that tonality works, in the way that it just inherently is. Now, this is such a deep rabbit hole. This is crazily deep, so I'm not going to go too much into it. But the normal way that we would interpret classical music and romantic era music is that you have contrasts. You have active and calm, and they contrast with each other, and you have tons of emotion, and it's like it's a story, and it's a story in the sense that the really good stories have stress and conflict. And stress and conflict is that part of the nervous system which is stressed and active and feels that it's under danger of some kind. Now, this piece here, I think actually it's just very, very calm. And it made me think like some people who follow not my grade 8 tutorials, but who follow some of my other videos and the podcast might know that I am heavily into meditation and Buddhism. And so one of the goals of Buddhism, if it can be said to have a goal, that's not a very, very good way of putting it really, but Buddhism sort of teaches that you find happiness and you find all the good stuff in life by not getting swept up in emotions, by just taking everything equally, that whatever emotion comes up, you don't react to it, you just observe it and don't get too caught in it. And I kind of feel like this is what's happening with this piece a little bit. It's like you don't react to these emotions. She's just happy. She's just very happy. It's like she's walking along, and then she just gets a slightly different mood. And so these moods just come and go. So it's like she's walking along and all the emotions, this emotion comes, and she's like, oh, that's an interesting emotion, and oh, that's an interesting emotion. And it's kind of a different way of composing. And this is just my opinion at the moment. This is just, I'm not sure how much I believe this, but it explains why the structure is just so woolly and why it's not a really strong rhythmic structure, because it's very episodic. It's very sort of it's not like strictly composed. And then the new one comes along, and then that's gone, and then because basically what happens if we hold on to emotions, which is like the opposite. It's what Buddhism is trying to help us with. Buddhism tries to help us because when we just grab onto emotions, we kind of suffer, and we cause suffering by causing unnecessary drama. Now, arguably, all of Western classical music can be said to be described as unnecessary drama, except that we kind of just enjoy it. We don't get too caught up in it. God, this is so deep. This is ridiculously deep for just this very easy grade 8 piece. But, I hope this is kind of interesting and maybe sparks some interesting ideas and stuff. So where was I? Yes, so basically you grasp onto emotions, and this is when you have structure. So when a good composer, Beethoven, whoever, you know, has structure. They are taking an emotion and they are really grasping onto it and developing it and doing something with it. When you feel an emotion, and this is a lesson for life, that all of the painful emotions that we don't want, you know, one thing that Buddhism and meditation helps us with is when we experience an emotion and we are afraid of it, or we really don't want to feel it, we think it's unpleasant, we want to get rid of it, we actually create a conflict and a fight that makes that emotion bigger and makes it harder to actually get rid of that emotion. When we actually just experience an emotion and don't react to it and don't get caught up in it, what generally happens is it just disappears, it just goes, and then the next emotion comes along and it just lets everything flow. And this kind of makes me think of that a little bit, you know. And it's gone, the next thing. And that's gone, and now it's the next thing. And then it's the next thing. That's gone, and now we're hanging on to this one a little bit. Yeah, we're hanging on now, we're hanging on. And now we're letting go a little bit. We're hanging on to this sadness, hanging on a little. And now we're gradually letting go. This is what's happening here. We're just gradually letting go of that emotion. And now it's gone, and we're hanging on to this a bit. And then, okay. Now this is another weakness. We are now into the development section of the piece. And I feel that all this section, up until bar 35, is only there because she doesn't know what else to do. And she's just following the conventions of classical music. I'm not convinced by it. It's like, let's now go into a slightly different key with a sense of suspense and develop these themes. Whoops. I mean, I'm just not thoroughly convinced, but anyway, you know, it's all right. I mean, it's beautiful in its own way. I just have issues with the structure, and then I don't like this, then the whole thing just repeats. It repeats almost exactly the same, but just in a different key. Incidentally, bar 26, what is that chord? So bar 25, and then what is this? That is just, to my ears, clumsy. So I just try and brush it under the carpet. Yeah, so anyway, you know, because it is quite an easy piece, you're going to hear loads of people play it. By the way, if you do base your performance on other people who are playing it, and, you know, I'm actually doing all these performances with Synthesia very, very reluctantly, because I've always nagged my students to not base their recordings based on someone else, not base their performances, the way that they're learning their piece, not to base it on someone else's performance, but to discover their own way of playing it. Yeah, anyway, so just be a little bit cautious, because there's a lot of people who are, like me, are putting their version out there on YouTube to inspire you and to let you know what the thing sounds like. There are some out there, and there's one in particular, you know who you are, that starts off with the wrong chord. It starts off with the wrong chord in the left hand, and then has a really, really awful wrong note later on that you do not want to base it on. So basically, you know, don't just ever listen to just one recording. But also, you know, be a little bit discerning with this one about which ones you listen to. I love this opening chord because it's so unclassical. It's like a major sixth. It's a jazz chord. I mean, you just generally do not get this chord in classical music. It's so unusual. It's so unusual that when she wrote this, it's jazz. You don't get this chord, so that is interesting. I really like that. and then it goes. It's this weird mixture of very adventurous composing. Some of the stuff in here is like really, wow, that's really ahead of its time, to just weird, boring stuff like this. It's like she can't make up her mind what style she's writing in. It's very odd. Incidentally, something else worth bearing in mind is that this is the third in a suite of pieces which is based on a Baroque form. I can't remember what the other movements are, but they are. It's basically like a Baroque suite. So there is something that there is some Baroque influence to this, and that might be as well why there's not too much emotion in it, because in Baroque times you didn't just pour your heart into it and pull things around too much. If I was playing this piece as the third in the three pieces that this comes from, I probably would play it a little bit faster as well, but because it's on its own, I'm a little bit more indulgent, especially when it gets to bar 5. I just take my time a bit more. And let it just unfold. If I was playing this within its suite, it probably would go... because then it's more in keeping with the other pieces. Now, something else which really I think is key, is vital to understanding this piece. So I'm gonna have to make another video about this at some point, but I don't want to take too long in this video because it's a huge topic. But basically, something that I think a lot of people don't get with interpreting classical music is that there's tension and release. So the way I always demonstrate this is like Happy Birthday. The end. And everyone knows that's not the end. Everyone knows you can't just leave it there. Yeah, everyone knows that chord comes. Even people who, you know, aren't musicians, we have an inherent instinctive understanding that comes from listening to music in our culture that has to be followed by that. So this is tension, this is release. And then something like, we know that there's a tension there. That tension is gone. There's a tension. Anyway, so what we generally do without even thinking about it when we are musical, when there's tension, we slow down and get louder. And when that tension releases, we speed up and it goes quieter. And I did this just in the last video that I recorded. What was the last video? I don't remember. But so let's take this sentence, the pianist and composer Helen Hopekirk, which is just below the music on this first page, page 23 of this. So if we want to emphasise the word Scotland, how do we emphasise that? We go, the pianist and composer Helen Hopekirk was born in Scotland and lived there until 1897. Now, how do we do that? We slow down when we get to Scotland and get louder. The pianist and composer Helen Hopekirk was born in Scotland. That's so it's a musical, you know, not just a musical thing, but something that we do in language. We can do the same thing with other words. We could emphasise the word pianist. So we could go, the pianist and composer Helen Hopekirk, and you know that's how that works. So in music, it's the same thing. Now you have a hairpin or crescendo decrescendo in bar 3. Why is it there? So now here. Okay, so do we feel tension here? Not so much, really. So, do we feel tension here? Not so much, really. Yes, that A sharp has tension. You know, we couldn't just leave it though. So I'm going to try and leave it on that A sharp in bar 3. So it has to resolve. It has to resolve to that G sharp. Now I think that that hairpin has been drawn badly because it implies that the B is the loudest thing. I don't think so. It's there to emphasize that A sharp. So let me really sort of exaggerate. So here we go. And what I did is I slowed down slightly. And then what I do on the recording that I put up on YouTube with the Synthesia is I hold it a little bit too long. So I do something like, if I slow it right down, I go. So, and then the G sharp comes in slightly late. So altogether, something like that. Now I'm really milking it, but this piece, because it's kind of technically a little bit easier, it's an excellent opportunity to explore all these elements of phrasing, that when you build tension, you get slower and louder. When the tension releases, you get quieter. So in the beginning, the D sharp has a little more tension than the B because we are in the key of B. So we can get a little quieter. And then here, this B definitely has tension. It's actually the F sharp is implied, and it's like a suspension. It's a suspended fourth that's going to the third. So, and then suspension, which then resolves. Now that's a bit much. That is milking it too much, but that's kind of what's going on. And then this. It's the 9th of F sharp dominant 7th, and it's waiting to resolve to the F sharp, and then it resolves, and this has tension because we want to go back there. So we're building, which is, so every time you've got this crescendo, you can just slow down a little bit. And now we speed up a bit because the tension is disappearing. Now, most people will do this without thinking about it. Some people are either not that musical, but it can be kick-started by purposefully doing these things. Or a lot of people are musical, but then come to the piano and tense up and go, or they might be, I can't use the metronome, they might be one, and so when we are overly focusing, and I nag my students about posture, because there's a posture that I notice so many amateur pianists do, which is like this, and they go, and it's like a fierce, I can't even do it, it's a fierce concentration and narrow focus, because there's like a belief that it's hard, you have to work really hard, you've got to focus, you've got to, really work hard. And the problem is, I'm writing a book about all of this stuff at the moment, but it means that when you're in a narrow focus, you can only do one thing at a time. You are one note at a time. This note, this note, this note, this note, this note. And you're not going to be musical. Now, as you just relax, there's so much I could say about this, but I'm going to really try not to get drawn into talking too much, other than just to basically say that you can kickstart the musicality, if you're in this narrow focus and you're not instinctively doing these things, it would be like, let's say we want to emphasize the word Scotland. The pianist and composer Helen Hopekirk was born in Scotland and lived there until 1897. And you want to emphasize it, but in reality, you're sat there going, the pianist and composer Helen Hopekirk was born in Scotland and lived. It's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. But if you kind of try and flow a bit more, the pianist and composer Helen Hopekirk was born in Scotland and lived there, then you can try and start pushing that process forward. So, it's interesting because some people who've put this on YouTube do the opposite in bar 5. They start going, and that's just not getting it at all. You want the opposite. You can hear how that is just so much more. It's from the heart, it just unfolds, right? But if you go, now what some people do is when they get louder, they just suddenly get quicker. God, I remember my teacher nagging me about this when I was a youngster, quite young. That basically, when you get louder, don't speed up. and in fact, most of the time when you're getting louder, you are building tension and you want to slow down. It's a bit contrived, but now it's interesting because I think that Helen Hopekirk's dynamic instructions, like the loud, quiet, when she says get louder, I think she means slow down a bit. There's tension here. And then when she says go quieter, it's like the tension's gone. Now this, I think, can, excuse me, we'll have some tea, can explain what is happening in bar 30. So in bar 30, you've got a crescendo and a diminuendo. Now, that means that you have a choice. You have a choice as to, I think, you get quieter, but you also slow down. Or you can do the opposite. You can speed up and get louder. I kind of, let's experiment with those. What do I instinctively want to do? I'm going to go from bar 27. And then, okay, so, right. Yeah. Now we've had this before. We've had this exact same thing in bar, where was it? Bar 22. So actually, we probably do want to get quieter. We get quieter, but the crescendo, it's more like an emotional instruction. Slow down. So, and then. And then that slowing down is a little bit like a crescendo. You're building tension. Incidentally, I do not like that A sharp in bar 31. For ages, I was playing that as an A natural and then suddenly noticed, oh God, that's an A sharp. It sounds so much better. Where are we now? Bar 30 now. And then I really want to go to that chord. Just sounds, it's too diminished to me. I'm not a fan of that. Anyway, so something else I want to point out as well. You really should now be doing this, although the way that she has put it in her piece is very tricky, and I'm going to have to stop soon so that my phone doesn't get upset that I'm using too much memory. You have little counterpoints in places. So, for example, the one that's just jumped out at me is, and it happens before. Okay, let's take bar 15. So, I'm going to go from bar 13. And then, now here, you have a counterpoint. So So it's the D sharp, C sharp, B sharp, B natural, A sharp. So it is very tricky in those particular chords. So and then bar 15. And there are other little places, like it's a little easier in bar 28 because you can sort of get your second. I do all of these with my second finger, and then I make my second finger very, very pointy and jabby, and all my other fingers very, very soft and yielding. Which let's go from bar 27. So and then here my second finger is very pointy and jabby. And so on and so on. So, by the way, oh God, I really hope I'm not taking too much time from my phone. At the end, I recommend using the middle pedal if you have a middle pedal. Upright pianos don't have middle pedals. This is a digital piano, my good old Kawai CA98, which has a middle pedal like a grand piano would have. So, I'm going to not explain it too much. Go Google the middle pedal if you want. But basically, let's go from bar 45. And then here, I'm not using una corda. Una corda is the soft pedal on the left that makes everything softer. Not quieter, but softer. And then what I do is I catch, in bar 46, I'm catching the Bs in both hands very quickly in the middle pedal, which means not using any other pedals. So you can only use that one on its own. So I play both notes, grab it with the middle pedal, then start using the right hand pedal, which means I can pedal after every single left hand chord and keep that B at the bottom. So we've got, and I'm pedaling on every single quaver in the left hand, and the middle pedal is holding that B underneath. And then when I get to bar 47, I let go of the middle pedal and then go to the soft pedal. So the soft pedal is on for the last 2 bars. And then here, you want quite a lot of D sharp in my opinion, and then very little of this last note, because that last note really bugged me. For a while, I was almost going to end it like this. I was going to change the ending and go, and then go and add a D sharp below the B, like that, because I just didn't like that final chord. But I think if you emphasize the D sharp here and then go really quiet here, it works better in my opinion. Anyway, God, I really went on some quite deep rabbit holes with that one. So I hope that was interesting. You know, rather than just like a boring tutorial where I just go through all the stuff that any kind of teacher would go through. I'm just looking at things that I think maybe not so many people would look at quite at this level. Anyway, hope that was useful and interesting for you. Do let me know what you thought. Do subscribe and like it as well if you did like it. All the likes and subscriptions helps me to be more visible so that other people will come across it, so that it's useful to more people. Anyway, thanks very much, and see you on the next tutorial and performance. Bye.